So how do you solve depression? Well, wouldn't it be great if I could give you a straightforward answer to that, one that will work for you because it would work on anyone? I'd win a Nobel Prize, and unfortunately, I can't win a Nobel Prize. Not yet at least, so this video isn't that. But what if that's my fault? After all, one mindset that people will throw at you is, if you really want it enough, you get it done. You will get it done because otherwise you didn't want it enough, and you have only yourself to blame. And that mindset can get things done. Whether it describes the world accurately or not, if you tell a kid that, you push it down their throats enough, that can become the world they live in. The problem is sometimes it's simply not true. You can be told to see the roadblocks you face as tests of your character. Did you treat that roadblock as your excuse to stop trying? Or did you find a way around it because you valued the outcome more than the cost it came with? The more valuable things are, the more they will cost. And that's why some people don't make it as far, because they won't want to pay the price. That's all great if it works, but in reality, many people might come to find that they try, oh yes they try, but well, either the world's just not that simple, or they just aren't good enough. Pin it on whatever you will, but bottom line is they can't do it. Now you will run into a big problem very soon with this mindset. Many people will, because sometimes you just can't. And what does a mindset like that tell you to do when you just can't? Well, you have to want it more. You have only yourself to blame. So until you make it, blame yourself. The problem is, that's about as far as you may ever get with this. Sometimes it just isn't your fault, and most of the time it probably is. When you're a kid and you can't figure things out, being told to keep trying often helps. That's how you build up independence. We don't want to try. Trying is hard, and when a real challenge arises, we tend to default to finding an excuse not to face it, because we don't know what to do. We don't know where to start. It frustrates us and makes us feel bad about ourselves. How often do your kids tell you, "That's impossible," as code for "you can't do it because it's impossible"? About every time they get tired of trying. Give it 5 minutes, give or take, depends on the kid. Well, you see, this mindset works in kids because you know what they're capable of. They don't. So when they come to you for help, you can tell if they really need your help. And if you raise them to think the key to being able to do everything their parents can do, solve all the problems they can't solve, for example, is to try harder, believe in yourself, and just want it enough, they'll tend to do that before coming to you for help, give it more time than they would like, because they don't want to disappoint you, and they want to become like mom and dad, of course. And a lot of the time, that's all they need. You need to learn to figure it out first, and that takes discipline. The thing is, as you get older, say in your teens, your parents don't really know what you can and can't do anymore. You're growing up, you're living your own life, they're more and more disconnected, and when they keep telling you to pull yourself by your bootstraps, at age 7, sure, age 10, maybe, but at age 15, you're probably not seeing the full picture. Maybe you're being stubborn and not them. But I, for example, grew up with that mindset. I see all those things that inspire me, everything one could become, an astronaut, a scientist, someone who makes a world-changing discovery. People could do that. Look at Einstein. Why not me? You got one life. How about curing depression? The limit is where you place it. I like that. That suited my ambitions, and it probably suits yours. The sad thing is, a lot of these things are way easier said than done. Easier to dream about, sure, but when you set yourself out to live those dreams, you don't really find the journey you were looking for. You dreamed it very differently. Now, you might have had parents who always told you, if you really want it, you find a way. And you always believed them. After all, you wanted to believe you could do it. That's what you wanted to hear. But come to find out, this mindset can only build your character until it destroys your character. If you dream too big, you're going to hit a brick wall that's too big, even for your commitment to handle. It's going to happen. And what are your parents going to tell you? Well, life's hard. Keep trying. I believe in you. But when you throw this blind-faced trust at an illusion, it will tear you apart. And being torn apart can help you learn. Say that you need to take it one step at a time. Maybe take a step back. You're going too fast, and that's why you're not getting anywhere. But if you have, say, depression, because that's what this video is about, that's going to take time, if it ever even comes at all. You might not know what you want, what's destroying you inside, why you're feeling the way you do. You just feel stuck. You start to panic, slowly but surely. Then you come to find out, through a series of attempts that stem from this very mindset, that you can't keep trying all you want. Maybe you're just not good enough, is what it is. Maybe you can't do it. I mean, how much harder are you going to try? How long is it going to take for you to realize you can't really try any harder? You've been trying your very best, and your best only goes so far. You can tell me to go bench 300 pounds. It doesn't matter what I believe or how much I want it. All I can hope to do with it is injure myself. This is reality, where some things are just too hard. Nothing's going to tell you that it's too hard. You have to guess or try and find out. But when you live failure after failure because you're just never going to give up, in the case of depression, what else can you really do? There's really no escaping the powerlessness that will inevitably start drowning you at some point. You can keep telling yourself you're not trying enough. You can keep telling yourself your parents are right and that it's your fault, but you can only keep doing that for so long. Reality always catches up with you, and when it does, it tears you apart, switches your mindset inside out. You grew up the happiest person you knew because you knew less about life than anyone you knew. But with your experience and your mindset, what else could you really blame your problems on? It starts drowning you. And well, what does depression feel like? Tell me. Anyone who's been drowning in it for the past, say, 7 years as I have, 7 years of your life that you missed is what it feels like. And in those years, you might start feeling like things won't change anymore. Once you've abandoned the I can do it if I choose mindset, you've had plenty of time to realize you've made your choice and the outcome wasn't your choice. And well, at that point, you just start complaining about everything. You have nothing else to concentrate on anymore but your misery, and venting about it helps. You think it does. You get engulfed into it, complaining about how horrible the world is makes it more bearable to live in that world. But what it does more than anything is keep you where you are. Forever, until you figure out that things have changed. Time makes things change, for the better or for the worse, and you only have so much control over that. But when all you feel every day is your misery, when you concentrate on it, dive down that vicious cycle, you'll get nowhere. Now, one thing that might come with time is you taking better habits, you structuring your life differently. The circumstances might have changed, but you're not going to notice it until you stop marinating in your misery and your shame. There comes a point where you need to readopt that mindset you were originally raised with, but with the modifications that suit your age. You can't do everything because mom and dad aren't going to know if you can. They can't tell you. But once you start realizing that, well, you can't, you're going to go down another vicious cycle that's going to render you even more incapable. And that would be cope. You think you can't do it, and from there, you're going to let bad habits that cripple you just take over because maybe you can't help it. You never thought about it this way before, but now that the field is open, it's inevitable. You're going to be engulfed in things you let happen because you abandon the idea that you could prevent it. But then as that happens, you also get older. You mature. Some things change for the worse, some things change for the better. You hit more roadblocks, but you also learn what you're up against as it destroys you. Here's how that plays out. You start by ignoring the problem until you can't, then you learn to find commitment and hope where there doesn't seem to be any, because you have to continue. This journey is all you have, and this hope and commitment is all that can drive you anyway. Then you learn you don't really know where you're going. You're not really sure, and in fact, you feel more and more uncertain as you start maturing and start getting a sense that life is hard, but it's also not always fair. It's not because you took the hard life that you're guaranteed the hard-earned rewards. Efforts and outcomes aren't really one and the same. You thought it was a means to an end with a lot of patience in between, and as you see that patience run out in you, you start to understand the more depressing aspects of how life works at a time where you can't really take more hopelessness, and so instead of absorbing this in the form of knowledge, it just leaves you more hopeless and more confused. Knowledge you can't allow yourself to absorb because you feel that its logical conclusion is your worthlessness. You see the patterns, you see that you've said I won't fail again 100 times, you see that you failed again 99 times, you can't help but sort of feel like there's a pattern here, and the further you go, the more that pattern seems unescapable. The more it seems that this pattern is the one thing, if anything, that's out of your control. You see all that, and so you fight against it, because what else can you really think to do? Your survival instincts kick in, and you fight against reality, genuinely thinking that you will win because you're still lost. You've still got more maturing ahead of you, no one left to guide you, these people all left you because of your condition. You start having a million things fly through your head at once, and you just don't know how to even handle it, where to even start. You started getting lost long ago, and all you had this whole time was your commitment, along with your mindset that allowed you to think that was all you would ever need, and good thing you had those two things, because that's all you really had. But that's also where you were wrong. We'll get to that in just a second, but commitment is not all you have. It's all you thought you had, and since you believed it, it became true. The mind works wonders to determine your fate, but now you've come to a point where you don't even have that anymore. Your life has been commitment. That's all you've known other than misery. And the misery has led your commitment, reminding you every step of the way of what you had to lose, what your commitment is worth. The misery is the absence of success, and your commitment is your only hope that this misery isn't permanent. Yet all that ever comes of it is less time left ahead of you, less certainty, and less commitment left to work with. Now at that point in my life, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, I was torn. This had torn me apart. I didn't know what to make of it, and to make it worse, that's when I got hit by a car. Right before I got hit, I had had a mental breakdown. So unsure, really wanting somebody for once to have my back. I was still committed, but I didn't believe anymore. And that was a turning point for me. I thought it was worth continuing to fight in case I was wrong, but the pattern of failure had already started getting to me. I wouldn't get anywhere. I knew that, and it stung more than anything could, but I remembered who I used to be. The hopes I used to see as not hopes, but a future. Everything I now knew wouldn't happen. My mindset had become, I don't believe in what I live for anymore. I live for a future that's not coming. coming. I live to bring it all back because that's how much it matters to me. I now know that it's pretty much impossible. I've grown up like all the kids do, but I won't grow out of my dreams. Ever. That's what separates me from everybody else, and if that's gonna be what kills me, so be it. I'll take these hopes to my grave, because the last bit of hope dies when I let it die. Hope is the one thing I can control, and in a world where you have one choice to make, either get almost no chance of success if you set yourself out for real success, or you could just go the easy route and get almost every chance of achieving enough if you instead set yourself out for enough and you allow enough to be low enough so it stays within your reach. Well, the latter was a no all the way, because that's not who I am. That's not who I'll ever be in any world. If I have anything left to be proud of, it's that no amount of misery can ever change that for me. I'll take every chance at failure. It doesn't matter what the chances of success are, or if I'll ever get to know what they really are. I'll take all the risk for what it's worth, because that's what defines me. I will never accept anything less than what I set out for, no matter the cost or risks. I don't care about keeping it within reason, because if I don't make it all the way, I might as well not get anything. So I'll live my life knowing all my efforts will go to waste, knowing it's harder than ever, knowing it will only ever keep getting harder and longer as it always has, knowing there's nothing left ahead as my life will inevitably keep going downhill, because time isn't on my side anymore. It's really a pointless and pathetic existence, but I can still feel in my heart that it's worth doing a million times over if in one of those roles I'm proven wrong. And one thing I know is that I will never see it happen if I give up, so let the false hope continue. I've realized that it's false hope, but I've also realized it's all I have left. And while I still want it enough, that's how badly I want to get out of all of this. So what are you going to do? Now you can start seeing how this whole mindset ends up breaking down. It gets worse and worse as you go, turning against you by turning you against yourself, becoming more and more counterproductive, more and more unhealthy, because how about when the chances of success become zero? What then? Well, at that point, if I'm still not willing to let this go, I've realized it's impossible, but not giving up still defines me. I have to make it possible. There comes a point where you realize it won't happen because you aren't crazy. Years of experience have at least taught you one thing, but if you're still going to pursue impossible in the hope that it happens, well, how do you define yourself? Maybe someone who doesn't learn, someone who doesn't want to learn, but insanity really is what this sounds like above all. You've convinced yourself from the very beginning that only you could fuck this up, and since you weren't going to let that happen, you knew you would make it eventually, so you gave it the time and the effort, but life's shown you that just wasn't good enough. You've given it all you've had, so what's left? Well, what can someone make of this? Either life's just not good enough, or you just weren't good enough. It's one or the other, but one thing you find in common is that at this point, you don't have control over either. Hopelessness is what's left. Desperation. You're crazy. You know this won't happen, but you keep trying. You're crazy. You won't make it. And you'll keep telling yourself that. Keep marinating in your misery and your shame, hating yourself for having let this happen to you, for not being good enough, for being a joke. And what's worse for me, I didn't instantly do that. At times I hoped someone who still had a clear mind might be able to help me, and finally I did find somebody. I had this breakdown, as I said, and a bunch of people came to try to tell me that I mattered, that they had my back, and that made me feel a lot better. I was already drunk, not drunk enough, I still felt hopeless, so after I was done talking to them, I went to go get more alcohol, and boom, I got hit by a car. Apparently I was in the ditch for a few hours screaming for help. I had an aneurysm in the aorta, so I had to have heart surgery for that. One of my lungs was punctured, I had to have a rod in my right leg, which I still have, because my brains had just exploded, double fracture in my left leg. It wasn't pretty, but above all, one thing I remembered was that despite all that, last night I had found that people were still there. The misery was going to get worse as usual. I was now in a hospital bed and I wasn't going to be walking on my two legs for another few months, but at least I wasn't alone anymore. At least that's what I thought. And you see, along your road, you get torn again and again. It never stops. That's life. But the sad thing is you end up thinking that's your fault. That isn't your fault. That just happens. I texted these people back. They had just organized a voice call to tell me that they cared. Nobody had ever done something like that for me. Nobody had cared anymore since, well, the old days, too long to even remember. But what do you know? I messaged them back, told them what happened, and well, that's when I started getting ghosted. By all of them. I'd grow more desperate, overdose on my Adderall because I just felt they didn't have the right words to tell them what was happening. I sent them huge walls of text, letting out my agony and desperation, hoping it would find the right place. But it didn't matter because they never cared. Nobody else will ever care. Until you get better, nobody. And that was maybe the hardest pill to swallow. You try to reach out for help, they get a sense you might be suicidal. It doesn't even have to be true. They'll throw you in a cage, give you time to learn your lesson, which is to never go reach out for help again, and then, once your prison time is over, they'll give you a healthcare bill, which is your fine for needing help. Better not do that again, but you've learned your lesson. And it keeps going on like this. Life screws you over, and you feel powerless in the face of what keeps being thrown at you. You start feeling that it's your fault for not getting over it. You stop tracking any progress you might make because it's been too long. You don't need progress anymore. It's been years. You want to see meaningful changes, but this just keeps happening. And so I went to alcohol, weed, kept hating myself and hating my life as I kept looking for this answer in case answers were still out there. All alone, cold on the inside, losing my self-confidence through new highs and new lows. I kept learning, kept seeing how this all works, feeling every second and every minute take its toll on me, knowing every minute would be a minute less to spend with those I cared about, my mother per se, knowing how long time feels, yet how little you have of it. Feeling regret. Feeling regret. Regret won't get you anywhere. It will hold you back. But that's all I felt. I regretted not having been good enough. I regretted the fact I still wasn't good enough. I hated the life I was in. I hated all of it. All these things I couldn't change. And I focused on these things as I kept reminding myself I had better to do. But at that point, it's just engulfing you so much that it's all you feel. Your years of effort that went to waste, all you've lost, everyone you've lost and won't get back, everything just dwells over you because you can't change it, and all those years have come to show that you can't. It's permanent. That's who you are. You're not all that which you thought you were. You aren't the person who would make it. You're the failure who didn't make it. And while at this point, it seems there's really no way of ever fixing the problem anymore. It took you that many years because the problem was never solvable. And that's where you're at. You're at this realization. We're at your lowest point yet. But you're still not done, because you see, this mindset has become the biggest problem. In fact, it's become almost the entire problem. You're getting somewhere. You sure might not feel like it, but you're getting somewhere. Just wait. The misery changes you, the time and the suffering changes you, but it also matures you. And at this point, that's what you really need. You've got it all wrong. Boy, you've got a lot of things wrong. And you've seen that. You started with a problem, you had to figure out what this problem was, and then you had to slowly realize you didn't know how to fix the problem. And then you had to spend maybe a year or two coping with that reality, making your self-hatred and failures as bearable as you could while having to live them. Well, now it's time to learn what that cope has been doing to you, what you have been doing to yourself. Now, for the first time, it's your fault. That's right, your fault. You want to be set free from all this? You're getting enough of it? Your fault. Imagine if it was. Imagine if it had been this whole time. What, you could have done something about it. That's all you could ever want, right? For something to be your fault. Because if you can acknowledge that it's your fault, you've got something to start working with. You've got something to fix, not just something to blame. But the problem now is you don't see it that way anymore. Now when things go wrong, it's either life's fault for being the roadblock instead of the opportunity, meaning you're just going to hate life more, or it's your fault for not being good enough, in which case you're going to hate yourself more. But you see, none of that is productive. None of that can ever help you. You've just come to be absorbed in your powerlessness. You really want to fix things. You don't care who's to blame, but at the bottom of your heart, you don't think that's still possible. You know that would be great, but you see, life happened, and now you know that's just not how the world works. You feel that your life is a mess up, and you feel that you were powerless in the face of it. That's all you feel, all the time. You have become this mindset, and notice, you really became what you believed. Nothing, no progress, no hope. See how you stop making progress? See how feeling that you've lost control makes you lose more control than anything ever could? Life did a lot of that, but you did a lot of that too. And you can keep blaming yourself for it, but that's actually where you fucked up. As life got harder, you saw the bad that life would throw at you, failure, and you saw the good that you could throw back at it, perseverance. There's reality, which is harsh, and there's the dream that you want to make of this reality. There's darkness and light. Which side is going to win? Well, as a kid, your ignorance shielded you from your powerlessness, and you thought the good would win. But then as you got older, you saw the bad would win. And that's the reality you formed. You want the good, but evil is just stronger, and there's nothing you can do about it but keep hoping that reality will change with enough time if you're still there to see it. But you've allowed yourself to think evil has won, and at that point, you can't help but focus on it. That's the vicious cycle that takes down so many people. That's what really kills the soul. You don't have to abandon. You just have to allow this thought process of yours to never change. You're done. You're focusing on the bad because that's all you can ever see, and only more bad will come because the more you focus on it, the bigger it gets. Your mind makes it real. Life doesn't even have to screw you over anymore. Your thoughts take the role and finish the job. You will find more things to complain about because in a world where you've convinced yourself you're not in charge of what happens, it's easier to bitch about reality than to keep trying to change reality. So you'll complain about how bad things are all the time, and that will tear you to shreds because it's true. Thing is, you've made all this up in your head. It's not true. You've just gotten so tired of trying, you just can't bear the thought of being broken again, believing there is hope again and finding out you were wrong all over. It's too much for you. You've grown up, learned some things about life that no kid would ever accept, and you're not ready to do it all over again now that you know what you're in for. You've grown out of the fantasies, and growing up means you get a better sense of reality, meaning your reality grows away from your dreams as your reality becomes the reality, where your dreams are just dreams. And when you leave the dream world, you realize some things actually are impossible, such as success and happiness happiness. Now, is that reality? Is that really what reality looks like? Ironically enough, you see what growing up means here, right? It means losing your soul, deteriorating. The people who have fallen down this route will have nothing left ahead of them anymore, because that's what getting older means for most people. Most people quit. Most people stop here, but in fact, most people haven't even made it that far. That's why most people are happy. They don't get this far in trying. It's not even worth enough for them to put everything on the line. They never lose everything because they never even bothered dreaming. The hardships never teared them. They never face any of it. They never learned. And if you stop when it gets this hard, you're even worse off because despair is the takeaway. Reality becomes what you make of it, always. Things aren't simply the way they are. Things are different for everybody because everybody looks at life through a different lens, through different experiences that lead them to different takeaways, and therefore they found different things. You're raised with a certain mindset. You see where that mindset takes you as you apply it to different situations you face, and eventually you settle on a certain view of the world. You can always keep maturing, but most people choose to stop once they think they know enough. And what a shame to make up your mind over the biggest fuck up. What a shame to have that be your final takeaway to life, that it just wasn't worth it anymore. That's the story of all those people you will never hear. All those people who came in your class to tell you things will be fine, to reach out for help if things ever go south, that there's always someone here for you. Those are the stories they don't want you to hear, why they play the video of that one story of that one guy who made it through all that. Some don't. Most don't. If you kill yourself, your story will never be heard. It's like it never mattered because we do live in a cruel life. But your story doesn't end here. You won't be killing yourself. You're still here, and you're only getting started. If you're at this stage in your life, here, try this. Change your mindset again. Not with delusion, not with desperation, but what you can build from both of those now that you've tried both and seen neither of them work for you. How about progress? Let that be your mindset because it's superior to both of those. But above all, not just a mindset, a strategy. How do you use this strategy? Well, you start by reflecting back. What have you been doing with yourself, and what led you to this point? Well, you started out with the right ideas, somewhat. You were trying to get things done by fiercely believing in yourself. But you see, you believed in yourself so much so that you believed the only real roadblock you could ever face would be your own devotion. You were so capable, your willpower was so huge, that nothing was above you. Nothing was too hard. There's no such thing as too hard. If it's too hard, guess what? Try harder. Now, for a child, which you no longer are, that's pretty insane. You can do anything. No, you can't. You're a child. You have a huge imagination. Not a lot you could deal with it though. Not yet. Then you tried trying harder and harder, remember never give up, and you never realized it wasn't possible for you to just want it enough to actually make it. If you wanted it enough, you'd be where you are now. Torn apart over it because you didn't let go. That's where you were always going to end up. It was never within my reach to beat NASA to Mars with my construction paper and tape, no matter how much I dreamed about it. So you got that wrong. It's not that you weren't good enough, it's that you were young and powerless. The right framing always helps. Take that guilt off you. It doesn't help, it's not going to help, and it's not even true. You didn't do anything wrong there. You just kept trying. Good on you. But next, you ended up losing that fight you never understood that you had lost from the beginning. It just took you a long time to figure out that it wouldn't work. Then you started marinating in your misery and your shame for having been helpless, and you started convincing yourself that helplessness is just the only reality there is because your failure is just the only person you could ever be. That was false. You went down the most self-destructive vicious cycle there could be. That's just part of the process, and I'm sure it changed you. Again, the misery hurts you, but it also matures you, and at some point you have to realize things have changed. It's time to stop coping. You can get somewhere now. You can stop complaining because, again, what if it's your fault now? What if you made it your fault? You no longer want to think about it, but actually, if it turns out that it is indeed your fault, that can take away your powerlessness. When you just don't know, it leaves you powerless, and then you start assuming everything will always be that way. But just take a step back. Through all the desperation you face, how much of it can you actually change? You started off by hitting a brick wall, and the realization that this brick wall was just unpassable made you think you weren't good enough, and so you started being not good enough because that's how you felt, so it became true, and that got you much lower. So now you have a lot more to work with, but again, a lot that you did to yourself. You can start on what you're doing to yourself, because at that point, it's almost all of it. There's a lot you got wrong, a lot to change. Well, let me ask you the question again. You saw that you fucked up, then you fucked up again. Where to next? Well, by now you sort of know the self-destructive habits you tend to have. I know mine. And if you haven't started observing where those lead you, what leads to what, start doing that. You know you do things that will only hurt you. You don't enjoy life. You don't believe that you have a future, so you cope. You cope a lot. I cope by daydreaming. Daydreaming of the life I felt to live up to. I do that a lot. And it gets me nowhere. None of that ever will. It makes me feel more insecure about how far my reality is from that, but I daydream, especially while listening to music. I daydream of everything I'm not. Stop doing doing that. It's hard, but I have to stop. Next, I don't eat a lot. I take my meds. My meds make me not hungry. When I wake up in the morning, I'm not hungry. So what do? Well, I could go put some soup in the microwave, easy to chug down. Hungry or not, you can do that. But no, most of the time I don't feel like it, so I don't do it. Especially in the morning. I feel the worst in the morning. And that's where your day starts. If you start off wrong, that's not looking good for you. So you're going to need to structure your life, by the way, and that comes with time. But what else? Oh, drugs. I do that way too much. Vaping, smoking weed, going to sleep very late, watching videos when I know I shouldn't, then having OCD take over while I'm just writing random letters on flashcards for like an hour. I spend a lot of time distracting myself from what I should be doing because I don't feel I can do it. I check Twitter, YouTube, every social media. Now with the structure I built around my life, basically I'll get up, take my ADHD pills which allow me to function. I can't function without them, and eventually I'll crash. The effects will wear off while I try to get as much productive work as I can, and then when I feel I can't do it anymore, I get up, go outside, and go for a walk, where I try to analyze and discuss everything I've been doing wrong, everything I've been doing right, just try to get a sense of where to go from here, pull my thoughts together, and really, if you can do that just every day at a certain point, go outside and just talk to yourself about everything that's been going on as you try to make sense of it, that can get you a long way. Well, I made that happen, and then I made a habit of it. That was a while ago, but it's definitely one of the changes I'm the most thankful for. In fact, it's gotten me almost all the ideas I've had since I was hit by that car. Every new idea almost. And, well, yesterday things were rough. I had been coping hard. I was furious with myself as usual. I had just taken another molly flat I knew was almost certainly laced with meth. I knew what that would do to me, yet I took it anyway. Now at this point, I wasn't really feeling going outside anymore. But I still forced myself to do that because breaking a habit, I know how much damage that does. Not worth it. So I forced myself to go talk, obviously not in the greatest state of mind for thinking, but I did it anyway because I knew I had to. And imagine if I hadn't done that, because that's where all of this hit me. Imagine all I could have missed out on if I had just gone with, I can't do this right now. Well, now that I'm older, I can see. It's not about everything you have to lose, it's about everything you have to win. If I had done that, I would have done that to myself. And as I tried making sense of all of this and building a new vision, I realized, yeah, I'm having a hard time. This sucks, but why am I feeling so shitty? Oh, that's right, I took this molly pill, probably shouldn't have done that. So much that I do to myself, so much that I can prevent. And that's what's so beautiful about it. You've grown up, you can start seeing what you do to yourself, and that's how you get through life. Not by complaining, but by contemplating why this happened to you. Because if you can fix it, that's much better than complaining. Start with this. At this point in your life, things are too hard. Even if you thought, oh, I'm doing all this wrong, you can't really be like, okay, well, I guess I'm just going to stop doing that then. You have to take it step by step. What's the hardest thing you could do right now? Well, maybe stop complaining. Start with that. Everything you have to complain about, try to think about how it could be your fault. Because if you could find that it is, you have work to do. Now, every time you do something self-destructive, think about what the outcome is. I'm going to keep watching YouTube instead of going to bed. Well, the next day when this hurts, don't think about how horrible it is. Remember what you did. Remember what you're paying for. Everything that happens to you that you don't like, take note of it and try to find anything you could be doing that could be contributing to that. Stop feeling, start thinking. What hurts you the most? What torments do you face that hurt you the most? Well, if you could find a cause, if you could attribute as much of your problem to something you could be doing better, you have a path to follow. Again, not delusion, not desperation. You've tried that. No. Progress, little at a time. Try to attribute all the torments you face to some self-destructive pattern in your behavior. Because again, there's a lot that you're doing to yourself. What could I have done to bring this upon myself? Again, if you can find something, you can take on the powerlessness. Stop blaming yourself or blaming life. Train yourself. Every time you're feeling shitty, life's already hard, so you might as well try to do this. Train yourself to not complain about things, but instead think about why this is happening to you. And once you have, instead of coping with that torment by just wishing life wasn't that way, cope with it by remembering what you did wrong. Remember that moment. Bring it back to your head. Remember the pleasure you allowed yourself to indulge in. Remember how you put that pleasure ahead of what would happen as a result. Because that was for later. Well, later is now. You weren't thinking about it then, understandable, but now you really should. Don't forget why later had to be this way. Because of you. Because of what you did. Now you're too old to hate yourself for it. That was yesterday. You know you didn't want to hurt yourself. You don't want to think about the hurt, so you cope and pay later. Why wouldn't you cope anyway? Life's going to be shitty regardless. You might as well suffer more later since you don't have to think about it now. That was your thought process, not just I don't care. But actually, this is heavily disproportionate. Most of the time, the price will be a lot worse than the pleasure. It's not worth it. And then this pleasure becomes normal. You don't take pleasure in it anymore. It just hurts not to do it because you've made it a norm. And that's how more vicious cycles start? Well, just think. When you're having a shitty time, remember what you're paying for, always. Remember what you thought at the time, and ask yourself if it was worth it, every time. And that way, you can build yourself up to remember when you're about to do something you know you'll regret. Remember how that went last time. But most importantly, think about how much better it could be. Again, it's not about everything you have to lose, it's about everything you have to win. You have to stop hyper-concentrating on the bad as you've programmed yourself to do, and how you do that is, instead of complaining, you think of what you did wrong that led to that, and you think, this is what I'm paying for. Now I know it wasn't worth it. Now I can tell. But hey, I wasn't thinking about right now back then, but how long have I gone not thinking about it ever? Just thinking, oh shit, this sucks. That's not self-reflection. You weren't getting anywhere because you didn't set yourself some reasonable goals. Just look at what you're facing. Try to see what you're doing to yourself. What's the cope and what's the result? Go one step at a time. Like that you don't drown yourself again. What are some habits you can try to take? What could demand the least amount of effort while giving you the most in return? How could you go around what you're doing? Again, strategy. Every time a problem comes your way, if you learn to cope in this manner, look back at what behavior of yours you can attribute to this suffering and redirect the hatred it leaves you with from yourself or your life, redirect this hatred towards your own actions, you can start remembering what you're paying for when you're about to do it, because that muscle memory will stick. You can get a better sense of it's not worth it. That's how you get that power over your life back, with strategy. Throw away this hatred, replace it with thought. Where did I fuck up? This gives you the power to not fuck up. This gives you the power to not only see what you could be preventing before you make the mistake, but it allows you to see your progress. Your progress is important. When you think about how this will hurt you, at first you'll be like, whatever, I'll think about it later now that I know I should. Let's see how this works. But then when you do things right, you have to focus on that. Focus on your progress. That's the motivation. Remember that this is about progress, not outcome. And the more you attribute your suffering to the fuck up you did, the more you drill that association down your head, the more you will start seeing how powerful you really are. Now, contemplating your own misery will only make you more miserable. Contemplating the solutions done with how could this be my fault, that will only work if you frame it as how can I get control, not could I be the problem again, why am I doing things wrong? You will be doing things wrong, and that's great, because that means you have a long way to go. Again, framing. We love to blame, especially when we feel things aren't working and we don't have a grasp on the situation, we don't feel in control. We love to blame, but that will only get you more powerless, and that's what's at the bottom of it. Again, your mindset. You're not powerless for your mistakes, you've just got more to work on, including how you're going to work on it. Don't just get up and think about how shitty life is. That's easy, and you're better than that. Start thinking about what you did, because that's where you can change. Remember, as you're suffering, what you did, keep that in mind so you can remember it better next time it's about to happen, and think about how far you've come. Look at the progress you've made so far. Constantly. Look at your suffering in terms of what you did, not what is. And remember that for what you can do, you've already started. You're reflecting, not bitching. You're on the right track already. Think about that. Congratulate yourself for that, because you're on the path to not allowing it to happen again. And you can be happy over that. You can remember when you did do things right, here's what I didn't let myself do, and here's what came of it. Again, as I thought this all through before writing it down, I had just fucked up. I had just taken a pill, and at the same time, I had some good to reflect on. I had done that, it sucked, and now I just wanted to lie in bed, but here I was because I had developed a good habit. And imagine if I hadn't done that. Imagine all the progress that I would have missed out on. And again, linking these things, linking the price to the behavior, it can give you all the power in the world. It can remind you of what you have to lose and what you have to win. Not in your head, not in your dreams, in reality. If you drill that link between what you're doing one instant and what comes of it later, you drill that down your head enough each time you're suffering, you can start to see more clearly that I'm doing this to myself later. Now, do I think it's worth it? It can make the choice easier, because the choice isn't really what you had made of it. It's not either suffer less now, take the blow to your ego later, or pretend you can bear your suffering now, realize that you can't 5 minutes later and do it anyway. Again, I used to binge my Adderall prescription because of this mindset. I don't do that anymore. That mindset will not work. Coping will not work. You have to realize why you're coping and realize what it's doing to you. Remember when it happens. This was me. I can change that. This is why I went well, and this is what I need to concentrate on not doing again. Bit by bit, never allow yourself to complain. That's the one rule. Never allow that. That brings back the hopelessness. If you're going to complain, you better make that productive, because you can. You can find where you did wrong and then take back this power. And as you do, keep track of every time this is paying off. Every time matters. Every time reminds you that it's possible. So concentrate on that. That's the next journey. And if you try that, see if it works, just know I'll be trying with you, because that's where I'm at too. Now we're on the same page. And if that doesn't work, I'll let you know where to go next, because I'm still trying. I'm not telling you all this because I found my way. I certainly did not. I'm just telling you all this because I'm still trying, because it's still possible, and you should know that. If I can, if the most degenerate like person can still hope to become better, someone like myself can still find hope through strategy, so can you. So can you. So much to win.